Hello, and welcome to Other Record Labels, a brand new podcast where I talk with people from other record labels. I'm Scott Orr, and I suppose I'm your host. You know, this kind of all started a couple months ago. I was coming to the end of my 7th year running Other Songs, which is a small indie label here in Canada. We had done a bunch of EPs and full lengths and some studio tours that we do on YouTube, and things were going pretty well. And even though 2017 had actually been one of our biggest years financially, for some reason I was feeling really discouraged and sort of alienated. I found myself comparing my label to other indie record labels and trying to figure out what I was doing wrong and what they were doing right. And that's when it hit me. Maybe I should just ask them. So here we are. I just over Christmas, I emailed a bunch of labels, told them the idea. I had no idea if they would even open the emails, let alone agree to be interviewed. But they did. A lot of them did, actually, and big ones, labels that I've spent the last several years emulating and aspiring to be. I think there's so much intimidation and fear when it comes to launching a label or running a label. And so to hear other people echoing your challenges and frustrations can actually be really helpful. One of the labels that I really admire is Trouble in Mind Records from Chicago. Trouble in Mind started in 2009 by husband and wife duo Bill and Lisa Rowe. Their roster has included Sunwatchers, Omni, Ultimate Painting, Michael Cronin. My guest today is one half of Trouble in Mind, Bill Rowe. How you doing, Bill?
Doing great. Just been a busy week. We've got a record coming out tomorrow.
Oh, no way. That's awesome.
By a New York band called Sunwatchers.
Okay.
And they're an amazing quartet. It's like this weird fusion of like psychedelic rock and like free jazz and a little bit of like desert blues and things.
Oh, nice.
It's just, it's like guitar, bass, drums, and then the guitarist sometimes plays electric pin, which is like an Indonesian electric guitar competition kind of a thing. That's what it sounds like, at least. I'm probably grossly oversimplifying it. And then another guy plays keyboards and saxophone.
So that comes out tomorrow. What does a day look like for you today or for tomorrow? Or like, do you have everything done, or are you kind of stressed out on days like today and tomorrow?
It depends.
Okay.
We're pretty prepared for tomorrow. All pre-orders have shipped as of like late last week or this past Monday, and I'm just sort of like keeping up with the incoming orders now. But promotions in full swing, like all that sort of stuff is already moving.
That's great.
So now it's just sort of like herding in reviews when they come in, shipping out orders when they come in, that kind of thing. But I'm always on to the next thing.
Right,
so
right.
This one's totally in hand, but we've got more records coming out every month.
So with this record that you're releasing tomorrow, and this is something I've wanted to ask some people before, but when was this record mastered, and what was that time between tomorrow and from when it was mastered?
Well, this particular record was done and mastered maybe I think in October of last year.
Okay.
No, even sooner than that. It was like, or later than that, I should say, like July.
Oh, wow.
So we try to, we work with a distribution company called Secretly Distribution.
Right.
And they require sort of parts and assets for releases to be moving and, if possible, in hand 4 to 6 months before the release date.
Wow.
So we have to be like very prepared on our game at all times.
No kidding.
So, this one, we've been working on it for a while. We're working on everything for a while. So typically we like to have things within that time frame. So everything mastered, ideally artwork done within 6 months of what our proposed release date is.
Unbelievable. That's incredible.
Yeah. It takes a while. Pressing plant times are better than they were, but they're still not great.
Right. Right.
You can expect 3 months, but sometimes it can take 4.
Wow.
Sometimes more, depending.
So was that 6 month lead time, was that always a thing, or was that imposed by vinyl?
Well, I mean, we've only been working with them for now a couple of years, but I would imagine it is because of vinyl. Yeah. You know, there's more labels than ever. There's more bands than ever. There's more people pressing vinyl than ever. So, you know, I remember when we first started the label, you know, 9 years ago now, we were able to, this is something I'll never forget. Like we turned in, this was a 7-inch also. Right. We turned in the master, got tests, and then got our finished, completed records in 1 month.
Oh my gosh.
That was insane.
Yeah,
I mean, that's an
crazy.
extreme case. But that, I mean, I always think back to that. I'm like, man, used to, you could have everything in hand within 2 months. 3 months was like a really long time.
Oh man. So that 2009, right? Is that right?
That was 2009. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So have you been, I mean, do you feel frustrated in any way? Like in the past, like 5 years now that the times have been, I mean, at one point it was just insane, but that must kind of frustrate you a little bit.
I mean, a little bit, but you know, you kind of have to roll with it. I mean, that's kind of our philosophy in general. It's sort of like, it gets frustrating sometimes. It's more frustrating when you have everything, you know, you have your shit together.
Yeah.
You get everything checked in time, and then it's like the pressing plans fault.
It's a bottleneck.
You know, or there's a bottleneck. Yeah. Or something. It's like, you know, I've got everything submitted 6 months in advance, and then it just continually keeps getting pushed back, which happens not very often, but it does happen.
Right.
That's more frustrating than just the times being longer. You just have to kind of like make your adjustments and go from there.
Well, I often feel bad for the artist too. I mean, thinking that thinking about when these songs that come out tomorrow, thinking about when they were written, you know what I mean? So you always feel bad. Like the creative process has long since been over, and they're probably chomping at the bit with new stuff already, you know, and yet now they have to promote, you know, an older piece of art to them.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the way it's been, you know, for a while. I mean, you know, back in the day, you know, we're talking, you know, 60s and 70s, you know, when major labels kind of owned pressing plants, they could, you know, record and press a single and get it out there, you know, in a week, you know, or days.
Yeah. I actually just read that Sam Phillips would record something from Elvis or Johnny Cash, and then he would take it over that night to the radio station.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Incredible.
You know, those days are gone,
yeah.
You know, but, you know, having been in a band with, you know, my wife and partner in the label, Lisa, and I used to play in a band together, and, you know, we had a couple of records come out, and it was always the same. You know, you record your record, you'd be super excited, playing those songs over and over when you play live, and then by the time the record comes out, you're just kind of sick of playing the songs.
Right,
and so you know, with the case with Sunwatchers coming out tomorrow, I mean, they've already, if I'm remembering correctly, already started writing and maybe even recorded partially of, you know, songs for the next record.
Right. Wow.
So, you know, it's just a matter, I guess if you're a band, I would hope you have to expect that there's just realities of, you know, logistics that have to happen. You know, you could put it out, you know, immediately if you wanted to. And even like, you know, release it immediately when you get the records. But, you know, if you want to make a real go at it, there's things you have to consider. Like you want to make sure you're able to get the word out. And if you want to get it, you know, people to write about it in magazines, that's a 3-month lead time right there. Wow. If you want to get people to write about it in blogs, it's a little less time, but it's still a couple months because they're constantly getting pitched things from other people, you know, especially if you're doing PR yourself, which I do most of the time.
Well, we got to go back. I got to go back to the beginning here because we kind of just dove right into this. But first of all, thanks so much for doing this. I really appreciate you just kind of sharing your wisdom and just being really generous with your time. I really appreciate that.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, again, no problem there. I'm not sure how much wisdom on my part. But.
No. I've already seen it. I love Trouble in Mind. I kind of came to you guys through Ultimate Painting. I'm a huge fan of theirs. I have their first 2 records. And so when I was thinking about doing this was one of those dream labels that I never thought would return my email. I'm not kidding. I'm not just saying that. It's definitely true. So you're in Chicago, right?
Correct.
Okay, cool. I know that you and your wife, Lisa, run the label. What does that look like? What is your office like? Are there different things that each one of you is responsible for?
Well, our office is literally the spare bedroom in our house.
Okay.
So
great.
you know, I don't. You know, if this were a video call, you could see behind me. I'm sitting in there right now. It's I have a desk, and there's record shelves behind me filled with records. We have big whiteboard with projects and their statuses and things like that. It's like any office, but it's in our house. We keep the overhead costs low. We're not making money hand over fist over here.
Yeah.
I can imagine anybody is.
Right.
But, so keeping our overhead costs down and having a distribution partner helps. We don't have thousands of boxes sitting around in our basement of records. So that helps a lot. So we're able to have a home office. And I mean, as far as our responsibilities go, Lisa still works a day job. She's a librarian for the Chicago Public Library System.
Oh, cool.
And, she helps out doing, answering emails and responding to things on, her lunch breaks and things like that. But it's mostly just me. Like, I'm emailing people back. I'm setting up things and then, on SoundCloud or, putting things in templates and emailing the pressing plant. I'm boxing up records here and sending up people's orders out. It's literally a 2-person operation.
Do you like that? Do you like that you do a little bit of everything? Do you like that variety?
Yeah. I mean, it definitely keeps it interesting. It was a weird transition. I worked a day job also for 3/4 of our time as a label so far.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I worked at Permanent Records, a local record store, which is now actually Joyride Records. They sold it.
Okay.
But I worked there for a while, and I started there full-time, doing the label full-time also. And then the label got to be so, taking up so much of my time, I went down to part-time at Permanent. And then it just got to the point where I was like, I have too much I need to do. And coming to work is taking away from the time of the things I need to do for the show. So it just became a thing where I just had to quit.
That must have been a great moment. Like, did you celebrate that moment?
It was very strange. I mean, it was definitely cool and great, but it was strange because, when we started the label, it wasn't a thing where we were like, I'm going to do this and this is going to be my job. And
really,
it was a fun thing to do in our spare time. We started the label when Lisa was pregnant with our first child.
Oh.
We had been in the band, and the band kind of went on hiatus, for obvious reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of wanted a way to keep music around. And I'd always wanted to start a label, so we were like, hey, let's try it. We had a bunch of friends, from being in the band that had bands, and we asked them to do records, and they all said yes, which was shocking. I guess we got to start putting these records out. So, that it just sort of snowballed from there. Do you never imagined ever that this would be my full-time job.
Yeah, I want to ask, I mean, do you regret having like tempered expectations? Do you think things would have been different if you had kind of shot for the moon right away?
No, I don't regret that at all. I mean, we sort of stumble into things with trepidation, It's sort of like, I think it's, on the one hand, it's good to be bold and it's good to just like dive in. But at the same time, we don't have a ton of money. We definitely didn't have a ton of money then.
Right.
So it was sort of like we'd put one out, see how that went, take that money, funnel it into the next release, which is still kind of what we do anyway.
Right.
We couldn't just dive in whole hog and just be like, we're going to put out 10 things and hire PR and do this.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. Take us back to the beginning. Why did you start a record label?
Well, again, as I just sort of mentioned, we used to play in a band.
Mm-hmm.
And then that band went on hiatus when Lisa got pregnant with our first child. And so we kind of wanted a way to keep music around and in our lives. And aside from just, going to record stores and buying records, what if we could sort of still be involved and still contribute in some way?
Yeah.
To the scene or something, man. and that it seemed obvious that, record labels a good way to do that. You can still be involved and, instead of your dreams being realized, you're helping somebody else realize their dreams.
Right.
So, and ultimately we're far better cheerleaders and advocates for other bands than we ever were for our own
that's
bands.
Great. That's awesome.
It's like, our band was fine and it was great and I had fun. I feel like we wrote great songs and did great things, but it was never going to go anywhere. So realistically, we were like, well, this is way better.
That's awesome.
And it's way more fun.
I I went through some interviews that you did in the past. One thing I read, tell me if this is true. Both you and your wife have to agree equally on an artist to sign them. Is that true?
That's true. Yeah.
How has either of you lost out on a great band because of that rule, or how's that worked?
I mean, lost out, whatever.
Right.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
There's plenty of other bands out there, but there's been bands where I've been like, I really want to work with this band. I think they're amazing. And Lisa's like, I'm not feeling it. And vice versa,
Yeah. Well, that's cool.
But, there's I'll if it's something I feel really strongly about, I can usually plead my case, and maybe 6 times out of 10 it works out.
That's good.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. If it's something where I'm really insistent and she's like, dude, I'm just not feeling it, then it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's definitely good that it kind of puts your tastes to the test a little bit. There's a little bit of accountability there.
Yeah, definitely. And it's really just, it's helpful to have a partner, not only in the label, but in life, who is like a really great bullshit detector. And it's sort of
Yes.
like, well,
Yeah.
It's like, this is great, but like realistically, like, are they going to tour? There's things you have to consider, not only just, I really love this record. I mean, ultimately that's what it boils down to regardless.
Yeah.
But, it's sort of like, if this band is going to tour, you have to be realistic about it, or it's sort of like, well, ultimately this is this or this is that, and you just have to.
Yeah.
It's just good to have somebody be like, no, dude, like, think about this for a second. And you're like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, I imagine it's hard to be objective if you're just completely enthralled with the record.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard. Definitely.
What did Trouble in Mind look like back in 2009? Like I always, when I talk to labels, I try to remember, back to different points and what music looked like back then. But did you have retail distribution? Did you have an online store? Like, what did things look like?
We had a website, very basic website that our friend Rebecca, who plays in the band Negative Scanner, built for us.
Okay.
It was very basic, very, very bare bones. So we did have an online store. We did have distribution through a local company here in town. And, we were small, we were small potatoes, and we were doing 500 run 7-inch, 7 inches.
Right.
So it wasn't like a major thing. So, that's kind of where we're at. It was still in a spare bedroom in our apartment. When we first started, we had a new baby, so we were sleep deprived.
Oh, that's crazy.
Those kinds of things. But I was mailing everything by hand. I didn't have a postage scale system, so I would, address everything by hand and then take them all to the post office. Sometimes, hundreds of 7-inch boxes to the post office, and
wow.
They, I'm sure, hated me.
What role did iTunes or Bandcamp play back then?
Not very big. I mean, I still confess, like, much probably to our distribution's chagrin, digital is still kind of the last thing I think about.
Oh, okay.
And not because it's not important or what have you, but it's just, I'm not conditioned that way.
Right.
I'm a fairly old school, I grew up buying vinyl LPs, and then when CDs, I bought CDs,
Yeah.
but I'm a physical media person,
Totally.
I like to have the object. And so to me, I'm sort of like, well, I got to get everything ready and make sure the LPs are being manufactured and the CDs are all set up and getting manufactured and getting all that put together and, writing the one sheet and doing all that stuff. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I got to get this set up in digitally as well. So I got to get those things put together. That's always the last thing I think about. So back then, I mean, like iTunes, I would say maybe the second year of our existence, we started putting things up digitally.
Right.
We used to use this service called TuneCore, which was really great.
Oh, yeah.
It worked really well for a small label like us at the time,
Yeah.
You have a small fee and they get it up. You can pick and choose where you want them to go up, and they put it up for you, and it was great.
Yeah.
They pay you out regularly. It's all, good to go. But once we switched over to Secretly, they handle all that distribution stuff for us digitally, so we don't have to worry about it.
And do they handle like some of the promotion side of things digitally as well, like editorial or?
No, I mean, that's still kind of
okay.
up up to me. I mean, they'll try to. They have a team there that tries to get things playlisted on Spotify and things like that.
Right.
But
so you have
and
to
they do.
You have to force yourself to care about digital. Is that what you're saying?
Kind of, yeah.
That's really interesting. I mean, I know, like, I'm sure a lot of labels, smaller labels who, of younger people who didn't grow up on vinyl or even maybe didn't grow up on CD. It's the other way around. You know, they probably don't put much thought into physical or retail.
Yeah, that seems weird to me, but I can definitely see that. I mean, totally. I mean,
yeah,
like our kids are growing up in this, the streaming era. They stream Netflix. They can stream any show they want on Netflix or wherever, and
yeah,
they can listen to whatever they want to whenever they want to on YouTube or Spotify or wherever.
Yeah.
It didn't used to be the case. So I guess it's sort of like for them, me having all these records, in our living room, or me buying records or going to the record store, they're like, oh, geez.
I don't know. I think our kids will probably be different than everyone else's kids because they probably have spent time in record stores by the time they're teenagers.
Who knows? I don't want to. It's a tricky situation. You don't want to force your, your hobbies and your ideas and not your ideas, but your sort of interests on your kids necessarily, because you want them to be their own person.
Right. So, right. Well, I don't know. Honestly, to be honest, I can't agree with that. I think I'm gonna monitor what my daughter's listening to and correct her a little bit.
But, you can just let it happen and let it happen organically. And it's like our kids have grown up with me listening to music constantly. Like I have something on. I mean, I don't have anything on right now because I'm talking to you. But before that, I was listening to a record.
Yeah.
I have something playing all the time. Like even when they're home, I have a record on, or I have something playing on Spotify in the kitchen or something, just so that even when they're doing their homework, just even if it's like jazz or something, just like, so there's always music playing so that it's something that they're comfortable with. And it feels weird to them when there's not music playing.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I'm the same way.
And I'm not sitting there going like, you should listen to, because this is great. If they ask, sure, I'll tell them.
Well, you know what?
And our daughter does ask. Like she's 8. She's super into the Beatles right now, and I'm there for her wholeheartedly. She's like, let's listen to the Beatles, and I'm like, okay, let's listen to the Beatles. Let's do it.
That's great.
Before that, she was super into David Bowie, and we're like, oh, great, let's listen to David Bowie.
My daughter is 6, and she went to a school play, and now she went through a season of ABBA. She just had to. Everything was ABBA for her, which is great. I think that was fine. I didn't correct that.
It's better than, the soundtrack to Moana or something.
Right. Also that, though. Also that. Yeah. I've played that a bit. Well, you know what? Kids will do what you do and not what you say. That's what I always try to remember. And
yeah, it's true, though. Things playing in the car sometimes, we've gone on a couple of road trips, and it's fun to, like, make mix CDs with them. I'll make a playlist in iTunes, and we'll burn it to a CD and listen to it in the car. It's fun to do that with our daughter, and I will find her being like, what was that song we were listening to? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, you mean that Fairport Convention song? That's weird.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's things like that. It gets in there.
Yeah.
You can't force it.
Well, the thing with, I would like to think that they don't really, there is no difference between kids' music and music to them. I mean, everything is new to them. So,
yeah,
what there's no reason to think that they would gravitate to kids' music aside from maybe funny lyrics or something.
Sure.
Okay, we're getting off track here. Sorry.
Yeah.
All the non-parents are kind of a little lost right now. I'm distracted by the Moana right now. I just want to go listen to Moana. Was there a specific record or an epiphany in the past 9 years that kind of acted as a turning point for you guys? I mean, you said it's 3/4 of the way is when you went full time. Do you remember like a moment when it shifted from being just a fun idea into a legitimate thing?
Well, I mean, we've had a few records that, I wouldn't say they've blown up, but they've been like pretty big ones for us.
Okay.
The first one being the first Michael Cronin record.
Right.
2011. Now I'm trying to make my memories going to go against me, but So that one was probably the first one, and that one was unexpected on every front, from us and from Michael's. He was just like, "Oh, great, this is insane." He didn't put much thought into that being a full-time thing. We were just like, "Oh, this is our friend. He's made a great record. We're going to put it out."
Right.
So that was probably the first one. That sold incredibly well for us at the time. We were like, "I can't believe we're selling this many records. This is insane." And so, that sort of took us to like the first step. And then probably the next record after that was a couple of years later. We released the first Jaakko Gardner record.
Okay.
And that one was not only a hit in the States, but also in Europe and the UK. So that one for us, we were like, "Oh crap, like we're selling like a ton of CDs," and that's never happened.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
And that's all overseas, Japan,
Totally.
Europe, still buy CDs. And so they were buying them hand over fist. And we were repressing the CD before we were repressing the record, which was insane.
Unbelievable.
So that for us, that one was probably the one that took us over the edge, where I'm like, I have too much to do. Things coming in that I need to take care of, and I've got to go to work for 8 hours.
Yeah.
So so that was probably the one. And then, that in combination with a few other records coming out around the same time, the Morgan Delt record shortly after that, and the first Doug Tuttle record, the Klaus Johann Grob records, and those sort of, were all picking up traction and steam, enough to keep me busy.
Yeah.
So
do you have a sound with the label, or a consistent vibe between all the releases? Is that something you aim for?
Oh man, I mean, not really. I mean, it's not something I aim for.
Okay.
It's something we aim for.
Yeah.
It's like, it's just really kind of like what catches our ear. I'm sure somebody, outside listeners might disagree. Like maybe you have an opinion, but it's not something. It's not a conscious thing from us.
Okay.
We're not like, we're going to only release post-punk, or we're only going to release psychedelic music,
Yeah.
or we kind of release a little of everything, and I think that reflects our personal taste.
Right.
So.
Interesting. Well, shamefully, as much as I love Ultimate Painting, I realized I just recently realized I hadn't dug through your catalog as much as I should have. Until kind of prepping for this, and I found Omni, and the Paperhead is a super beautiful records. And kind of my question is like, aside from your annual label compilations, do you do anything specific to promote the entire catalog? Like assuming that fans of one band would likely be fans of your other bands?
Well, speaking of digital, I've been trying to make sort of more, rolling label playlist. Just sort of like,
yep.
This is kind of what we were doing on Spotify. But other than that, the Bandcamp compilations are really the thing. I try to do one a year at the end of the year, sort of like a year review sort of thing. And those people still, those are all pay what you want, and people still buy them, even the ones like 2013 where I'm like, oh wow, somebody bought that one. That's crazy. But I think they're important, and our distribution company, they want us to do like physical label samplers, and that's well and good. And
would you?
We haven't done one yet. We had plans to do one, and that they keep sort of getting pushed aside because we have other records we want to put out.
Yeah.
As opposed to, it's
like a vinyl sampler.
Yeah. Or even a CD, and CDs cost significantly less than a record. But even that, it's like, well, I could put out this compilation CD of tracks that already exist, or I could, use that money and manufacture the back CDs, or manufacture the old Milk CDs.
Right. No, it's true. And I'm not sure, as a music fan, as a label, I kind of get it. I love compilations online. I love downloading it, and it's a great way to discover music. I've done it with tons of labels and collectives. Sure. I don't know if I'd want a sampler in my vinyl collection. It feels weird. I don't know.
It didn't used to feel weird. It does kind of. I mean, I kind of agree with you, but it didn't used to feel weird. I find myself going back. There's like, Flying Nun compilations or Factory Records compilations, right, or things like that I've had for years, and I'm just like, I don't listen to them often, but when I do pull them out, I'm like, oh man, I totally forgot about this band. This is great.
True.
As opposed to only listening to clean records. I'm like, oh yeah, this Kind of Punishment. This is great.
And it was popular in punk too. I think I remember in the '90s, all my friends had massive, like 23 song CDs. From
totally.
Yeah.
Turned to Tentacles comps, or SST comps, things like that. Like totally. Growing up, it's like those were, you had, it's like, well, I really love Black Flag, but, I can't really afford to take a chance on just some record on SST necessarily, but this comps may be a good way. I'm like, oh yeah, I really love this record too. This Saccharine Trust is amazing. Like, checked it out. So
yeah, no, it's true, I guess. And I think that all kind of points to, for me, one of the things I try to remind myself is like the way I listen to music, the way I consume music, it doesn't necessarily represent everyone. Well, certainly doesn't represent everyone. And I have to kind of remind myself of that all the time. And when people are like, oh, are you guys going to print CDs? And it's like, what? But like, there's still people there. It just makes sense for them.
Yeah. I mean, we don't do CDs for every release.
Okay.
So it just doesn't make sense for some of them where I'm just like, oh, this is going to be a 500 press record. Like what's the point?
Right.
If somebody wants something for like a preview or to write an article or a review or something, I'll send them a download.
Sure.
But, at this point, it's like it's just wasted money to a certain degree. Like there are certain records you're like, oh well, this will sell, so like we should probably put this on CD. Like it makes sense. But there are some that's just like, well, this is an experimental record. We're only going to do 500. Like there's no reason to do 1,000 CDs.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Tell me if this is correct. You said once you have a group of 150 people who follow the label and will buy everything. Is this true?
Yeah, that's true.
How do you foster this group and how did this group come to be?
Well, I mean, I think it's just, they trust our taste, I guess,
Yeah.
I used to do the same thing. I was a fan of a label and, this is pre-internet days. So you would go to a store and be like, oh, I don't know what this sounds like, but it's on blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So I'll pick it up.
Yeah.
It's on something. I'll pick it up. Or it's on, whatever. I'll pick it up.
Totally.
Back then you trusted labels sort of taste and, for lack of a better word, curation to guide you. And I think, people still do that.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, that's true.
I don't know if that's a testament to us continually doing the right thing, or maybe they're just, maybe they're just collecting the limited vinyl versions and following them and they're going to eBay them all.
Yeah. It's a Discogs investment.
Yeah. But to be serious, like I think it's just people who are fans of the label and they trust our taste and they trust what we're going to do. While it might not be their favorite thing, it'll be interesting to them, and it's something they're like, "Oh, this is great. I never would have picked this up otherwise."
Wow,
I like this record. So,
yeah, that's amazing. And
we appreciate all of those people like more than I could even express, because those are the people who believe in us. So, that sort of is one of the things that keeps me going around. Like, oh, I can always count on Jason Smith's order. That's great.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. And oftentimes too, it's like you use them as kind of this, like in your mind as this like representation of the audience. And when you're listening back to a mix or thinking about signing a band, you kind of think about them, a little bit.
Well, a little bit, I guess, but it's sort of like, well, I can't really, it would drive me crazy if I'm like, well, are people going to like this record?
True.
It's like, I can't think about that.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true.
I just, we think about it in the sense of like, well, let's think about this in the sense of how many should we press? Like, do we need to do 1,000? Should we do 500? Do we need to do 2,000? Is this going to be like a thing that really catches on? So, and that's always a guessing game, but you kind of base it on that. So, but we don't ever think of like, oh, well, our 150, loyal listeners are not going to like this record, so maybe we should put it out. That's not something I can't think about that.
Well, and that's a good point. I mean, that's fair. I think, that's the whole point of the success behind what you guys do. It's because of your taste. It's because of some of the risks that you've taken in the past.
Yeah, I hope so.
Talking about fans, I mean, there are fans who love listening to music, and there are musicians who love creating music. How does a record label fit into that picture?
Well, I think ultimately for us, physical distribution is probably the main factor.
Okay.
Like we have our distribution partner, and that sort of helps us bridge the gap between, the musician or artist and their fans or, listeners.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's only, I feel like there's a certain amount of people you can reach self-releasing a record. There are obvious exceptions to that rule, but for the most part, I'm generalizing, but you can probably reach a specific number of people doing everything yourself. But if you have somebody that's a partner with you that is sort of an ally and can help you get your music out there,
mm-hmm.
then that's beneficial to the artist. And that the artist sort of tends to then place their trust in the label's reputation or curation or what have you to help, buoy their music and get their music out to more people. And, the distribution house, just gets it into record stores.
Yeah. Well,
that's the thing where it's like, oh, I heard this song online. This is great. Where do I buy it?
You know what? I can tell you from firsthand experience, Bill, that it's working, because I heard Ultimate Painting. I'm not sure. I think it was through Mazes or something, but I read about them. And then I was at Sonic Boom in Toronto, and it was there that I think it was their second record, and I couldn't believe it. And it was also extremely cheap, but inexpensive. I couldn't, in Canada, our records are very expensive, but, I was blown away. Like, I was just so excited because here's this, relatively unknown band. And, it was in a record store that I love to go to, and I bought it. And then I went back like a month later and bought the next one, or the previous one.
Great.
So it worked.
That's awesome. I like hearing that, and I'm glad you mentioned the pricing too, because that's something we definitely think about, and something that I consciously think about, especially having worked in a record store.
Yeah.
I would see it all the time. Somebody would have two records in their hand.
Oh, yes.
Like, which one's better? You'd be like, well, they're both awesome. Like, this one's great, this one's great, and 9 times out of 10, that person's going to go, if they want to buy them both but can only afford one, 9 times out of 10, they're going to go with the cheaper one.
Yeah. True.
More expensive one.
So wait, so the pricing that I noticed, that was coming from you?
Yeah. I mean, we dictate the pricing to the distribution house. So depending on how much money we want to get back over our manufacturing costs, that's what it
That's
dictates.
Amazing. That is, I mean, and it's, I think with this record, you're right. I think if it was up into the import prices, like up over $30, which is extremely common here in Canada,
sure.
that would probably be like, man, I love this record, but I'm going to have to stick with Apple Music because, I just can't, and, but to see it and I can't remember now, it was a couple years ago, but my guess is it probably was like $21.99, around that range, or $22, which is an insane price for vinyl here. I mean, that's like you're stealing that vinyl. And so I was like, oh, hell yes. Like, and it was like, not only did I find a record I liked, but I just felt like I had won the lottery. It was, it was a great experience.
You could get a cup of coffee after.
Yeah. I could drive home.
Yeah, right.
No, that is really cool to know. And I think I'm curious I have a really, different picture of the scene from Canada because we're affected by the US dollar and the Canadian dollar versus US dollar. And so right now for new releases to come out, the average new record, like major label or any label really, is $29.99 is like the kind of like the cheapest you can expect to get it. Unless it's like maybe a one disc and it's like, more mass produced, you might be able to get it for maybe $26.99 or something.
Sure.
But to have, and so really what that does is if you're going to buy the new national record, like kind of a bigger record, then that kind of eliminates you from buying any smaller indie releases that month. Because you've spent and that national record I think was $36.99 here. So it's like, and I mean that's Canadian dollars. So for you, that's like $32 or whatever. But
that's expensive.
Yeah, it's very expensive. And I mean, like, I'm not saying I don't know where the money's going, and in some cases like that, the vinyl is beautiful. It's heavy vinyl and it's gatefold, and I understand that it's different from the way they used to do records, but that it really just prevents people from, and it prevents. I'm sorry, I'm taking up this time here, but
No,
it prevents me as a music fan from then actually being able to buy my friend's vinyl. You know what I mean? Or and I tell artists this all the time when they say, should I do vinyl? And it's like, just remember, you only have so many friends and family members and fans who actually buy vinyl. And then of those people who have a record player and buy vinyl, they might not actually be able to to fit your record into their, 6 or 12 a year that they buy.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know.
I mean, I definitely buy exponentially more.
Agreed.
Probably
Yeah.
the average listener, but yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. And it's something that we definitely take into consideration.
That's amazing.
I grew up, listening to punk rock and sort of that, the thing that had always struck me growing up listening to records, like, especially from a label like Discord Records, where, they would always have the thing on the front that said, pay no more than $4.99 or whatever it was on the front. And to me, that really struck me, because I was like, man, they're like saying, if you are paying more than this for this record, you're getting ripped off.
Yeah, nice.
And that to me, that stuck with me a lot. So I was like, well, they're not in it for the money. And it's like, it's great to make money as a label because it, keeps your label going. You're able to funnel that into future releases and more artists and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, if you start a record label to make money, if that's your goal, then you're living in a fool's paradise. Very rarely are people making money doing this.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen often. So that's where you have to come from. So it's like, if it's not about the money, what is it about? It's about getting music out to people and getting people to listen to the music. So the best way to do that, aside from just making it available via streaming services, is to make it affordable.
Yeah.
So, maybe we're shooting ourselves in the foot. We had just had to raise our prices by $1 here recently, and it just about killed me, because I was like, man, this sucks. But there's the reality of like rising costs, and it just costs more to make vinyl now, and it's just what it is.
What's in America, like, what's the average price for your vinyls? Like, do you have like a set price for a vinyl?
I mean, when I worked in the record store, it would usually be somewhere between, on the cheap side, 15, and on the expensive side, 20.
Oh my gosh, I hate you.
Release, like not a deluxe reissue.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
just like a standard record.
Oh man, that's amazing.
Anywhere between 15 to 20 bucks. Well, and that's what we always would shoot for. Like when we started out, our LPs were $12.99.
Oh wow.
And I was like, I want them to be $12.99. Whatever that means, that's what I want.
Yeah.
And logistically, it's just not possible anymore. I feel like our records now go for somewhere around 15 to 18 in stores from what I've seen. So,
well, I mean, it's just
18. It always makes my heart hurt a bit. I'm like, oh man, come on.
I just think that it really just encourages that old school moment that you and I have probably had, where you're at the record store and you see an artwork that you like, and then you put it into one of those CD players and listen to it, and you're like, I'm going to buy this on a whim. And that's a lot easier to do when the record is not crazy expensive.
Oh, totally. I mean, you can't afford to do that anymore. I feel like very rarely, I used to be able to go to record stores and be like, I don't know what this is. The cover looks cool. The description sounds awesome. Who knows? But it's cheap. F it. Let's do it.
Well, I'll have to. That happened to be one of the greatest moments of my life. Was in 2001, and I did that with a little Chicago band you may have heard of called Wilco, because the album was so cool. And I don't know if you ever get to see those beautiful buildings, but I was like, "This looks amazing. Who is this band?" And that changed my life.
I mean, I like to think everybody has those moments, but
man. That's awesome. Let's talk about the artists. This is great. I'm having a great time. Thank you very much. I think I've read that you said that you actually have signed bands that have sent you unsolicited demos.
Yeah.
That's kind of the opposite I've heard from every other label I've talked to. Why has it worked for you?
I don't know. That's a good question. I feel like it's, I mean, we get lots of unsolicited demos and like lots.
Yeah,
and,
sure.
The sad reality is we can't put out everything. And,
Totally.
There are just some things that just aren't our taste, and that's fair enough. And hopefully people are understanding,
Yeah.
but I can't listen to everything. I'm a very active listener. I listen, as I mentioned, I'm listening to music all the time, and I try to, even in my spare time, if I'm not listening for recreation, I'll sort of like tool around the internet and check things out. Oh, I heard about this band. What are they about? Sometimes I don't like it, but sometimes I'm like, oh, interesting. Like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
So, it helps, and it helps you stay well-rounded. And even if it's not something that I'm interested in releasing, it helps to, inform your musicality.
Yeah.
When you're
even
talking. It's like, oh, well, this is kind of like this band from here, and blah blah blah. So, I think that it would do labels a disservice, at least labels on our scale, to ignore submissions. You can usually tell pretty quickly when you're listening to something if it's for you or not. At least we can.
Yeah.
You're like, first song, maybe give it a listen. Skip through a couple more tracks if you're like not feeling it, just to make sure. But usually you can tell pretty quickly. If it catches you right away, you're like, okay, hang on. And then you listen to it, and then you're like, this is pretty great. And then we run it by each other and listen a few more times, and sometimes we strike gold and sometimes we don't.
That's amazing. But you've signed people.
Yeah, I mean the band The Night Beats was submission, blind submission. The Limignanas, same thing.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
and just an email. Were they local bands or?
Limignanas are from France, and I think they even got in touch with us because we released a different French band that they were friends with.
Oh, okay.
Cool. But that's kind of how it goes. You're like, oh well, we're in a band and we like this band, so they're put out by Trouble in Mind, or they're put out by, say Bones or whoever. Let's submit it and see what happens.
Yeah.
I'm imagining that's how it goes.
Well, it's great, and I mean, of course, like when we're talking that you have signed bands, it really is probably one in several thousand over the years. But
yeah, I mean, like I said, we get multiple submissions a day, so
yeah.
We listen to everything. I can't reply to everybody, unfortunately. I try to at least be like, we'll check it out. Thanks for sending it or something.
That's
but
great.
I just can't reply to everybody. But, if people follow up and I'm not feeling it, I tell them, I'm just like, hey, thanks for sending. It's not for us, good luck or something. But
that's really nice though. I mean, and I'd like to think, that's a kind of a change from, when I was a young artist and sending manila envelopes to every label I could think of, like, just to even get an email back, I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I hope so. I hope I'm not being crass or condescending to people. I'm not usually. I'm not being crass.
Yeah,
but, yeah. I hope they don't take it. I hope they don't take it the wrong way.
Right. No. I think
because just the fact that we don't want to release it doesn't mean that it's bad.
Oh yeah.
And, you know what I mean? It's like, but I feel like some people probably take it that way.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's a slippery slope, and you don't want to like insult anybody. So,
man, what a feeling it must be then to actually listen to something and go, "This is going to work for us. I want this."
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's amazing. Where you're just like, you get that tingle, and you're sort of like, oh, wow, this is sent this to us. Like what? I still constantly amazed, still even to this day, that anybody wants to work with us. Where I'm like, oh, you want to work with us? This is great.
Don't you know I'm in a guest room right now?
Yeah, exactly.
How does the process work then? Like, with your bands? Like, what type of input do you generally have in the creative or recording process? Are you involved with that process?
No. I mean, we want to facilitate whatever the band's vision is as best we can.
Okay.
So we try not to dictate the way it sounds or what they're doing or their songwriting or anything, because that's not our business.
Okay.
We'll offer suggestions or advice if they want it. If they're like, oh, I can't figure out a track order, what do you guys think? We'll be like, how about this? Or I don't know what to do for artwork. What do you think? Or, things like that. We'll offer advice, but we try to remain as hands-off as possible.
Okay.
We really just want to facilitate and be the outlet.
What about with artwork? Same thing, or is that something? I mean, that really plays into how things sell and how it works with the distributor and marketing.
So you broke up for a second there. What was that?
I said, what about artwork? Like, is it, what kind of role in the artist's artwork? That's something I'm really passionate about, and what it plays a bigger role in, not a bigger role, but it does play a role in distribution and marketing the artwork of the album. How involved are you with that?
I mean, again, same sort of scenario. I will say that if we get a piece of art and it's just not good,
yeah,
we'll say it.
Yeah.
Just like, I don't know, man, not feeling this. Can we work on something else or give a suggestion?
Yeah.
And you try to be as diplomatic as possible but there are sometimes when they just really bands just have no idea and they're just like, oh, here's a photo. And we're like, well, we could do a little better than this, don't you think? Like, I mean, I swear there was a year where we had like 4 records that featured a blurry band photo on the front cover. And it was fine for a little while, but after a while I'm just like, okay, no more blurry band photos.
There was a time in the world where everything was like, every independent release was like an Instagram photo with a filter on it.
Yeah. So, you want to offer advice when you can, but you try to be as hands off as possible. Sometimes it's hard to not say something, but we try not to.
Yeah. I mean, that's a question I legitimately, I'm curious about, because I mean, for you who does vinyl and they're shipped all over the world, I mean, you're thinking about that person who has good taste, who's hanging out in a record shop, and they pick up a Trouble in Mind record, and it's got a matte finish in it, and it's a beautiful piece of work. Like that really goes into that plays a huge role.
Well, yeah, I mean that's really that's your first sort of hook, really, in a record.
Yeah.
It's like, if they don't see the sticker, we have a sticker that usually is on the front of our records that has our logo on it. But if you don't see the sticker, the first thing that's going to catch your eye is the artwork. So,
yeah,
you want it to be good, and you want it to sort of be eye-catching, or at least sort of like intriguing. And then you go from there. We have a little description on the sticker on the front, and so hopefully the artwork will catch their eye. People read the sticker and be like, "Oh, that sounds pretty awesome."
Yeah. Yeah, totally. So, I know that, I mean, we're talking about vinyl. What about cassettes? Is that something that you guys are doing?
We have not done many cassettes, and not for any reason in particular. It's just we've done a couple, and they just don't sell for us.
Okay.
Like, people just don't come to us for cassettes.
Sure.
I think they're labels that works out better for, and people are into. If a band wants to do a cassette of a record, we'll offer to do it,
right?
Or they'll self-release it. We've had other bands that have been approached by other labels, like Burger has released cassette versions of some of our records.
Oh, that's cool.
For better or for worse.
Okay.
But,
yeah.
And it's usually the artist coming to us being like, Burger wants to do this, I'd really like to do it. And you're like, okay,
right.
Well, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Do you think it has, I mean, do you think that there's there's cassette labels and they're beautiful, and a lot of them, they have their own thing, and I think I love it. I follow a lot of them, and their stuff is so cool, and I love that aesthetic. Do you think that they will find a home in mainstream indie labels and record stores?
Cassettes, you mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like they're already starting to a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Again. So, I mean, I feel like Drag City does cassette versions of many of their releases more than I've seen more released than they used to do, for sure.
Right.
At least back from when cassettes were a thing.
I think Sub Pop does too.
Sub Pop does a little too. Yeah. I mean, people still do it. I think it's worming its way back in.
Yeah.
But I feel like most of that is really the bands.
Oh, okay.
Probably. I could be wrong.
Right.
But I feel like the bands are like, we also want to do it on cassette.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm just
curious. Like bands that shows they want to sell merch, obviously.
Right.
So having 3 tiers of pricing options,
totally
works out.
Yeah.
It can also be a detriment, which is what I tell people who are thinking about doing a cassette as well. It's like, would you rather sell a $15 record when you're on tour or a $5 cassette?
Oh, good point.
So
yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting.
But at the same time, it's sort of like, you also want people to buy the music, regardless.
Yeah. Yeah, no, totally. I'm just really curious. It's something I'm a little passionate about because of my age, and I like when I was a kid, I grew up on cassettes, and I have like a very, very like emotional connection to them. Just the sound of it, and not the sound of holding a case and it rattling, and you know what I mean.
Sure.
So I love seeing what's happening, and it's cool to pick up a brand new record on tape. But I'm just kind of curious of the position from labels on where they stand with it.
I mean, I'm all for them. I buy cassettes as well. Like I have a deck. I listen to cassettes, on a regular basis. It's just for us in general, it's not something that's factored in or made sense.
Yeah.
When it makes sense, we do it. When it doesn't, we don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, it's just fair. More times than not, it hasn't made sense.
Yeah.
So
I shifting over one of the biggest challenges and frustrations as an indie label that I feel is accessing like quality press pieces for my releases. What advice do you give, thinking about kind of newer labels or labels like myself who don't have their shit together? What advice do you give to smaller labels looking to find coverage for their releases?
Ooh, I mean, good luck. That's all
Okay, thanks for listening, everyone.
It's hard for us. I mean, it's hard for everyone.
Okay, that's interesting to hear.
I get, friends and people that run labels that I look up to, that I'm friends with, that are messaging me being like, "How are you guys getting so much press?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?"
Oh my gosh.
And it's all through the eye of the beholder, obviously, but it's sort of, it's a constant struggle. And I feel like, most of the time when I'm on the computer doing work, it's emailing people about future releases, trying to get pickup for PR.
Wow.
Because, and there are certain records, bigger records that we do hire out for, but I recognize that not everybody can do that. We can't do it all the time. So
wow.
It's just the reality of the situation. I wish we could. That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
But well,
that's really enlightening to hear that. Wow.
Offer, at least that started working for us, is number one, keep putting out music you believe in. And that will translate through your pitching. And then the second piece of advice I would say is be persistent, because the squeaky wheel, as they say, gets the grease. So,
oh, wow.
And send a physical copy if you can.
Oh, okay.
If you can afford to send it, I guarantee you a reviewer is going to be more appreciative of somebody sending them a physical copy, even if they don't write about it or not. Maybe they don't write about that one, but they're like, "Oh, you know what? Trouble on Mind sent me that record last time. Let me check this one out." And they're like, "Oh, sweet. This is great.
That's
I'm going to write about this."
Yeah.
So, and not that I'm saying, glad hand all PR people or whatever, glad journalists, but, it's sort of like you have to be persistent, and, you have to also consider that, if you're emailing them about trying to get a article written or a review written, think about how many other labels are doing the exact. So these people's, especially the bigger journalists, NPR, your Bandcamps and whatnots, they probably have hundreds and hundreds of emails in their inbox every single day of people being like, "Check out my record, check out this band's record." So
that's so true.
You have to sort of like be patient and just sort of like make yourself heard above the din, because there's so many labels and there's so many people trying to get their music heard or other people's music heard that you just kind of have to keep at it.
Wow.
Basically.
That's great.
And get an early start. Earlier the better. As I mentioned before.
Okay.
People are pitching features and reviews 2 to 3 months out for blogs. And I mean, if it's a print magazine, it definitely has to be like 2 or 3 months out. So
yeah. Okay. That's great advice. That's really, it's encouraging advice. It's not just good advice. It's encouraging to know you're not alone.
Oh, I mean, totally, man. I mean, believe me, like there are times you get stuck in your echo chamber and you're like, "Oh my God, nobody cares."
Yeah.
Nobody cares. I have this record that's amazing, that I fully believe in, that I support 100%. It's amazing. If only people could just hear it, and nobody cares.
Yeah.
Oh,
wow.
That's what you're saying to yourself, at least. Obviously people care, but it's like you get to that point where you just feel like rejection after rejection, or just
for sure.
ignored email after ignored email, and you're just like, man, what the hell? So, and it happens to everyone. It happens to everyone. So don't feel like you're the only one. And if you believe in it, keep it up.
Amazing.
Just keep talking about it.
Amazing.
Even if you're not even talking about it to a journalist or whatever. If you're part of like a stupid Facebook listening group, like, dude, I put this record out. It's great. You guys should check it out. Yeah. And then if it's good enough, word of mouth will spread,
Totally. The cream rises to the top.
Exactly.
Hopefully. Yeah.
Hopefully. Hopefully. That's the general idea.
Listen, Bill, thank you so much for doing this. This has been a ton of fun. You're 2009, so you have a 10-year coming up next year. Do you have any plans for that?
No, we're not. I mean, we're not ones for self-aggrandizing necessarily. There's talks going right now of us doing a sort of label festival at the end of the year.
Okay.
We're trying to get that put together in Chicago. And we're trying to work that out. I'm not going to give out any details on that because it's still...
Yeah. Sure.
If it falls apart, I don't want people to be like, you said this.
Nobody's going to listen to this. Don't worry.
Don't sell yourself. Come on. But it's not, it feels weird for a label like ours, like somebody like us, like what impact have we had for us to sit there and be like, 10 years, guys, can you believe it?
Well,
it feels weird, but
it's not though. 10 years is amazing. It's a big deal.
I mean, it feels as a personal milestone that, I don't feel the need to sort of like celebrate publicly. It's, it feels great to know that people have cared enough that we can keep releasing music that we believe in. So that is definitely something worth celebrating.
That's amazing. Well, congratulations.
Thanks.
Well, thanks very much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All the best. Let's stay in touch.
Thanks.
And thanks to everyone who listened to our first episode. I really appreciate it. You can visit us at otherrecordlabels.com and subscribe to a mailing list to find out about more episodes, or you can subscribe through iTunes, which would be awesome. To find out more about Trouble in Mind Records, visit their website, Trouble in Mind Recs, that's spelled RECS.com, troubleinmindrecs.com, or their Bandcamp, which is troubleinmindrecords.bandcamp.com. They're on Twitter and Facebook as well. And if you have some spare cash, head to the record store and flip a record around. And when you find one that says Trouble in Mind, pick a copy up. Thanks for listening.